history will be kinder to me than the contemporary media or for that matter, the opposition parties in parliament.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This was 3rd January 2014, Dr. Manmohan Singh's last press conference as the Prime Minister of India. He may be no more, but his legacy will live on. You just heard him say, history will be kinder to me than the contemporary media or, for that matter, the opposition parties in Parliament. So will it. Today, we have a roundtable of India's leading editors and political analysts who have not just followed his career from a bureaucrat to a Neta to the Prime Minister of India, but also met the Maruti 800 man who put India's economy in top gear. In 1991, he stood in the Parliament and fiercely defended his reform pitch for what he called a budget with a face. It was trial by fire for him as he faced the wrath of the leaders from his own party to get it adopted. The Manmohan Singh liberalization push, however, brought India out of its economic abyss, and Dr. Singh called himself the accidental Prime Minister. After UPA's shock victory, and yes, many in the Congress party were shocked with the victory and the opportunity that they got in 2004. Although known for his gentle demeanor and soft words, his fierce stand on the Indo-US civil nuclear deal reflected his steely resolve when he came down to it, as he risked his own government over it. After he steered India's economy through the 2008 global financial crisis, he became the go-to global leader. The then heads of states like Barack Obama, Gordon Brown, Shinzo Abe and Angela Merkel called Manmohan Singh their financial guru. He was called the financial doctor as well, as Obama once described him. So how will history judge former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh? Kinder than the then media and the opposition and at times his own party? That's the big question we are asking tonight. And joining me on the show tonight, Sheila Bhatt, senior journalist, editor. Shekhar Iyer also has followed Dr. Manmohan Singh very, very closely. Suhail Seth, columnist who's written several articles in the Times of Manmohan Singh and analyzed him over the years. Sabah Naqvi, again senior journalist. Between us, we've followed the senior leader from his time as finance minister to prime minister. And also joining the show is Sanjay Jha, suspended Congress leader, but a man who had an insight into the economic dictionary of Dr. Manmohan Singh and understood Manmohan Singh maybe a little better than politicians within his own party. And let me begin by asking Suhail Seth. How did you see Dr. Manmohan Singh, Suhail Seth? He was a man who was really the accidental Prime Minister in 2004 when Sonia Gandhi declined to become the Prime Minister of India. And who can forget those scenes in the Central Hall of Parliament where the entire Congress was in tears wanting her to take up the top job. But it was not to be. She declined that position, and then out of a hat, a name came up, which was Dr. Manmohan Singh. From then on, in 2004 to 2014, how did you see Dr. Manmohan Singh?
I saw him as a decent human being. I saw him as a politician, but a gentleman politician. I saw him as an avowed nationalist, a great patriot, someone who understood the pains, the trials, the tribulations of a nation. I didn't see him only as Prime Minister. I saw him as a person who epitomized care, empathy, compassion, and brought to his work a fair amount of academic gravitas. You know, it's so sad, Navika, that this year we're seeing the demise of good people. If I were to ever be asked, like you're asking me, it's the goodness, the innate decency of the man that India will miss forever. Everyone knows his contributions to the economic powerhouse that India is today. Everyone knows how he did what he did, qua the budgets, qua the prime ministership, how he fought for the nuclear deal. All that is in the public domain. I'll give you two instances of a personal nature. Many, many years ago, it was 2004, and I was asked by someone to meet the prime minister because he wanted India to put up a spectacular show in Davos. The brief from him was succinct. It was better than most marketing directors could give you. And it was a decision that was taken in a snap, but that decision outweighed everything else. And I saw the prime minister's non-economic brilliance at work because he understood the pulse not only of the people of India and the Indian nation, but equally the world. The second instance, there was a book launch, A.S. Dulat's book, Spy Chronicles. And I remember the anchor for that evening forgot to introduce Dr. Manmohan Singh. He was on stage, but no one introduced him. So when it was my turn to speak, I said, sir, it's ironic and tragic that you're the only person who's been left out of the introduction. But trust me, history will have many more words, many more, paeans of great tribute to you when the history of India is written. And you've seen this today, the outpouring of grief, the association of all his compatriots, many of whom are on this show, the fact that he defined decency in everything that he did is something that harks to an India that can still be surprised by its politicians. He was a reluctant politician, but he was a great prime minister. In fact, when you opened your remarks this evening, Navika, and said, the accidental prime minister, I'm so delighted that we had this accident. I'm delighted that we had a prime minister like him. I'm delighted that a human being like this man walked the corridors of power and wore power so lightly, so unobtrusively, and with such delicate empathy that there will be times that we will remember that I wish Dr. Singh were here. And that's the biggest tribute.
Absolutely. Dr. Singh and his sage advice is something many people looked forward to. But Sheila Bhatt, let me ask you, will everybody be so reverential of him, in his own lifetime? His own partymen. We all know what a struggle it was for him to run the government with the opposition that kept coming, the pressures that kept coming from the party. And I'm not talking only about the ordinance tearing incident by Rahul Gandhi. It's over the years that Dr. Manmohan Singh had to steer through the very rough and choppy waters of what the party wanted versus what was good for the government to do. How do you recall the challenges that Dr. Manmohan Singh, and of course today everybody turns around and says that the opposition judged him rather tersely and rather harshly, but it wasn't it a fact that even within the Congress, he had to fight many a Waterloo?
Yes. Thank you, Navika. First of all, my condolences for Prime Minister Manmohan Singh. During his tenure of 10 years, I had one of the best reporting years in New Delhi and on Raisina Hill. So for it, I really feel touched that he had such a fulfilling and purposeful life, and the man impressed all of us. Now, coming to your question, Navika, you may not be surprised because you were a good reporter also, but all of us know one thing, which is not matching with his public perception. Most people think, and absolutely wrongly, that he was a weak prime minister. Secondly, I don't think he was a weak prime minister. And second thing, people think he was not a politician, typical politician. No, sorry. He was an astute politician. He knew his politics. He knew inbuilt restraint of his prime ministership. It was a public posturing that was required and thrust upon him by Congress party to be a weak-looking prime minister. You know very well that how political parties and political leaders are made and unmade. Political leaders do public posturing. They acquire a certain role, they define that role, and then they perform that role. So, because those were a very unique Congress days where Congress party was having a foreign-born Indian leader, Sonia Gandhi, and she did everything right. She was also a very polite and quite acceptable figure, but still she wanted a deeper acceptance within the country. So she, very thoughtfully, highly intelligently, she zeroed down on Dr. Singh. And that nomination came with certain terms and conditions, and that was to be low profile, to be, he was looking weak, he was not a weak prime minister. There is lot many things are happening even in this government. I know Narendra Modi, we all of us know, he has a certain personality traits, but everything is not in public domain. Same way, I think I give a lot of credit to Manmohan Singh, lots of credit to Manmohan Singh for his global vision, for his foreign policy matters, particularly for a nuclear deal. India will have to say thank you today for nuclear deal, because that changed the entire shades of all foreign policy, our thinking. He opened the mindset. So I would give more credit to Narsi Rao for economic liberalization, but the man who implemented it, through him he implemented. So Manmohan Singh also gets credit, but bigger credit goes to Narsi Rao. But definitely during his tenure he did it. So coming to your point that a lot of people must be upset about him also in the party and all. But let me tell you, the party, Dr. Singh, and even opposition party, that time, BJP and others, all of them, it suited to brand him and tag him and call him as a weak prime minister, because it helped Congress party to maneuver and manipulate the politics the way they wanted it. And you know, in Congress there is an inbuilt necessity which is there today also, that the Gandhis has to be at the top. And not just at the top, but they must look powerful also. So, for 10 years this arrangement worked beautifully.
Absolutely, very well said. Very well said.
That it was a posturing.
Very well said, Sheila Bhatt. Yes, I also reported extensively in that period from the Office of Profit story when Sonia Gandhi actually gave in her resignation to all the scams, etc. I even traveled on several of those prime ministers with at least I can remember 6 destinations: South Africa, Uganda for the Commonwealth elections, to Cebu, to Cambodia, to China. But Sabha Naqvi, he was also always very bothered about how history would judge him. His statement, his quote that we played out at the beginning clearly said that somewhere this decent man, this man who was not given to confrontations, not given to fisticuffs the way we see in Parliament today, understated, I don't know if we believe Sheila Bhatt, maybe an acquired persona that he had. But the fact was that he was understated till, of course, the Indo-US nuke deal, when he actually decided that he was ready to give in his resignation if his party did not back him. And the manner in which, he just went along, the left parties deserted him in 2008. We came down to the no confidence motion. Sabha, how do you look at Dr. Manmohan Singh and his biggest challenges of his 10 years as Prime Minister?
So first of all, I think Manmohan Singh is one of the most significant figures in our public life in the last quarter century, 30 years. From the economic reforms which he implemented, which he thought through, he was scholarly. We all know him. We all know the kind of individual that he was. The first term, till the Indo-US nuclear deal, was a term which went very well for him. And it went brilliantly, even from the point of view, I consider RTI and Manrega to be very welcome. He also, till the very end, till he loses an election, he did not. There was a very open press. We all spent hours criticizing the Prime Minister. Let's remember that, Navika. Okay. In the second term, however, from 2010 onwards, and by the way, I was also on the China trip. There was one trip, China, Japan. I don't know if you were on the same one.
Hangs out.
Anyway, but from 2010 onwards, Commonwealth Games, which I think you reported a lot on also, that comes on, and then all these scams are unfolding on a daily basis. Even where I worked, Outlook magazine, led by Vinod Mehta, allegedly somebody who's really, we were doing big stories attacking the government. All of us were doing it. And then comes the Anna Andolan. The Anna movement and begins in 2011, and that really, so he had a torrid second term, and his reputation was destroyed completely because there was one scam after the other, we could also publicize it. Some of us, it was just a daily routine. Our magazine was being given leads about this and that, everything, coal, 2G, everything was exploding all the time. And then the Anna movement happens, and the Anna movement got a lot of traction on television. It was like, it became a national movement also because it came on TV, so much. And then that destroyed him. However, and so by the time his term is ending, things look, it was clear to everyone, the Congress regime, the UPA, was going to be defeated. I think that was quite clear. Just as his coming in was a surprise, then some personally bad things happened to him, Navika. If you think about it, the book, The Accidental Prime Minister. Is it ethical for any of us to work with someone and then to write a tell-all book about a Prime Minister? That happened to him. And that book was later made into it is completely unethical. I've had conversations with people I may be at loggerheads with. But it was done in the case of that particular book, and that tormented him a lot. And so a lot of things like Manmohan Singh was a professional, an economist, also, and he was all those things. He was highly educated, he knew his economics, but there was this problem there is this situation always in the Congress party that the family is first. And yes, I'm glad Sheila mentioned that point, that the reason why he was chosen is because there's no law in India that a person born in a foreign country cannot become Prime Minister. There is, by the way, a law in the US. So for instance, Elon Musk, I think he was born in South Africa. I don't think he can become the next president after Donald Trump, seeing how active he is. There was no law, but it was definitely an issue. So in the US has a law that you have to be born in America to contest the president for the office of president. We didn't have that law, but there was this public issue. That's why Sharad Pawar left, and that's why Manmohan Singh was selected. Very clearly, he was not elected. In the second term, when the Congress comes back with more seats, we are still very much in the coalition era. It's been a really good term with him at the helm of affairs. But the second term is just blown apart very quickly. And that is why we have this impression, it just blows. And in all fairness, this man, who I know that when his daughters and all got married, before one of them, before he became Prime Minister, the simplest, in their own personal space, they are the simplest people, And so this man was suddenly, a lot of the charges of corruption were being invisibly within the party. It was as if the PM is responsible and nobody else, He was also being made into a fall guy. All of this politics was happening around him. So he was really a gentleman Prime Minister. Beyond all of these stories that we covered day to day, and we all had it, he was a good human being. He did the best he could for the country. He just lived in a time where, but this is what happened. His second term was a change making.
Absolutely. The way you put it, and Sanjay Jha, isn't that quite right? 2004 to 2009, he was a Prime Minister who was selected. He went through with the nuclear deal. Nobody thought a nuclear deal kind of an issue would ever get him votes. But the fact that he stood his ground, the fact that it was passed, the Congress party came back with more number of seats. From 145 in 2004, they went up to 206 seats in Lok Sabha. And many thought that, it was all entirely Dr. Manmohan Singh's doing, the manner in which he governed the country. But the way it was frittered away, that opportunity was frittered away because controversies peaked one after another, and then this whole larger-than-life Gandhi's image versus the Prime Minister, how far he could go. It was actually the second term was a nightmare, despite the fact that he got that second term on the back of some of the good work that he did in the first term. Tad unfair to him and for the Congress party to look outside for the detractors of Dr. Manmohan Singh. Do you think there is an opportunity for them to look within as well?
Yeah. Navika, good evening, and to all my very distinguished fellow panelists. I need to start by first telling you that I completely agree with every word that Suhail has said about Dr. Singh. I can tell you, I don't know how well he knew him, how many times he met him, but I think his assessment of Dr. Singh is absolutely brilliant and to the point. And I couldn't but agree entirely with what he said. I want to make a point here, Navika, that the 2009 Lok Sabha election, where the Congress jumped from 145 to 206 seats, which today looks like an unthinkable fantasy, happened because it was spectacular perception of Dr. Singh for taking bold decisions. The RTI became a big talking point, transparency for the first time in looking at government affairs, et cetera, et cetera. I think these were, frankly, the Congress party, I know many people were reluctant to give him full credit, but the truth is it was Dr. Singh's victory entirely. And of course, it's a teamwork, but he was the lodestar for that triumph. Now, let me add to what Suhail mentioned in particular. I agree with Suhail completely that everything that he did, his accomplishments, his achievements are in the public domain. I was lucky to have a few interactions with him. I live in Mumbai, so I used to miss a lot of these functions in Delhi where I could not really interface with him at short notice. But I can tell you that an exceptionally wonderful, soft-spoken human being. And at some point, I'll probably write a piece on my last meeting with him, which is too poignant for me to perhaps share. It's an emotional moment, and it happened when he was feeling rather weak about some situations around him, but maybe I'll save it for another day. But I want to make 2 points here that I think Dr. Singh needs to be given full credit for. The 1991 reforms, I'm putting that aside. I think the whole world knows about that. But, during that 2004 to 14 period, Navika, you and I are both Gokhale students, the Great Recession, the mortgage crisis that hit America and ravaged a large part of Europe and different banks globally, and we somehow insulated ourselves. It came at a cost, right? There was a fiscal stimulus and it ran into a high inflation. These are things of an economic cycle when you overinvest and you make a heated economy. But the truth is that we survived the Great Recession. And we, during that 10-year period, grew at 7.8% GDP on an old GDP weightage, and lifted nearly 270 million people out of poverty, the second below China, which brings me to the core credo that India needs to be inspired by. I remember the conversation we used to have, and I think Suhail will remember that, reforms with a human face. Today we call it compassionate capitalism or responsible capitalism. But I think you see in that GDP growth and the lifting of people out of poverty, the real India story. That you can have private capital, you can have good industry, we should have foreign direct investment, there should be liberalization, there should be privatization, and we should not be scared of actually being more open and liberal with more private capital. Yet at the same time, to recognize that the bottom of the pyramid needs to be lifted up. The India story will be incomplete without recognizing that reality. So I think he merged what we call as neoliberal economics with also the hard necessity to invest in welfare and subsidies. I think that is his remarkable triumph story. And the second is, if you look at Aadhaar, GST, and the direct benefits transfer, the three things that I think Mr. Modi's government has tried hard to implement, and I think they have done reasonably well. But the architecture for these three were really built during Dr. Manmohan Singh's time. And I think there is the vision of Dr. Manmohan Singh that we need to recognize. He was bringing into distribution and economic governance technocratic infrastructure. He was building into it the use of modern digital technologies that resulted in the Jan Dhan accounts and so on and so forth. So very early you saw Aadhaar, DBT and GST talking about greater transparency, more use of tech, and becoming more digital and widely accessible to the common man. So that is the vision of Dr. Singh. And honestly, when I heard about him last night, I kind of remembered the last time I met him. And you just kind of, I just regret one thing, because it kept coming at the back of my mind for the last year, for example, that the next time I go to Delhi, I must meet him. He's getting on in age and so forth. I didn't do it. And I say in life, you have your regrets. But I guess that's also a reality I need to accept.
Very, very well put, very succinctly put. And Sanjay Jha, one of the rare occasions when you agree in toto with Suhail Seth. But yes, talking about Dr. Manmohan Singh is one of those moments in life. And Shekhar Iyer, you've covered the man, you've covered the party. You've seen how very simple man. When I traveled on those trips as a young reporter, sometimes when you are go for the first time on a PM's plane, you just see, you're overwhelmed with what you see. The big editors sitting there having their champagne and caviar. Yes, that is what was served in the media section. And some of us uninitiated people wouldn't even know what caviar was. We didn't come from those kind of backgrounds to appreciate caviar and champagne. But we saw all of that happening, and then I just happened, the nosy reporter in me just wanted to check on what the Prime Minister was going to have. And if I tell you the inside, it was just some baked ghiya that he was having. That was really Dr. Manmohan Singh. Simple, living to those very simple food. He had become the Prime Minister. He had everything for the asking, but was having his very, very humble ghiya and khichdi that he was having. And on the other side, the system as it existed. And it is this gap between Dr. Manmohan Singh and the system that I want to ask you about, Shekhar Iyer. Was that something that he rode over very well? And finally, was it the system that was the undoing of Dr. Manmohan Singh? How do you see the life and times of Dr. Manmohan Singh as the Prime Minister?
Navika, today, if we are able to connect to him, if we are able to see a lot of us in him, that's largely because he believed in one philosophy, which we often say to ourselves, "Jo mil gaya, usko muqaddar samajh liya." So he was a man who had stayed too long in Delhi and knew the Delhi political system, where he felt that playing the second fiddle is the easiest. But there are times only the second fiddle will be played, because the first fiddle will go silent. And he believed in that. See, he had three surprises in his life. The first surprise was when Prime Minister Manmohan Singh Prime Minister Narasimha Rao asked P.C. Alexander to contact Manmohan Singh to be ready to be sworn in as the finance minister in 91. That was his first surprise of his life. We have heard about it. His daughter has written about it. The second surprise, I think none of us will remember, is when Sitaram Kesari was made the Congress president after Narasimha Rao resigned. And of all the people he chose in the Congress working committee, it was Dr. Manmohan Singh. Dr. Manmohan Singh was brought into the highest decision-making body of the Congress by Sitaram Kesari. You know what was the reason? Kesari said, "I need somebody who will be able to show the dictum that Caesar's wife should be above suspicion." And the third surprise was when Sonia Gandhi chose him. But things were made easier for Manmohan Singh because that was the first term, and it was supported by the left parties. To begin with, Manmohan Singh had a very clear, course of kind of a chart that was set by the minimum common program. Left had insisted on a minimum common program, and that was there before him. But he knew there are areas where the common minimum program cannot reach, and where the wisdom will be left to him by the Congress party as well as by the supporting parties. That was economy. That he took. But he added on one more area, which was foreign policy, which Sheila Bhatt beautifully explained the role played by him, by his decision to go ahead with the clarity. Now, having said this, I knew that as the years progressed, in the first term, there was less of a scam and less of a problem, and a lot of the big changes we are talking about today, Manrega and all those pro-poor programs, were largely decided by the Common Minimum Program. And his job was to transform it into a policy decision which was easier because of so many inputs coming. Of course, you had the Sonia Gandhi-led National Advisory Council. But somewhere down the line, Manmohan Singh realized there were others around Sonia Gandhi who were bigger powers than actually Sonia Gandhi would want to influence. He accepted that. But post-2009, that is when left was no longer the scene, things really began to go haywire. That's the time when all these things cropped up. Some of the things that began in the first term, hit the ceiling in the second term. But Manmohan Singh, knew that the limitations were there. And he was willing to accept. See, the biggest quality about Manmohan Singh was he accepted whatever was the situation. And somehow he had to work it. See, very few people can be in that position. See, when Narasimha Rao was chosen to lead the government by Sonia Gandhi, Narasimha Rao was not a type who would play any fiddle. He would rather sing his own flute. So there, that is how. But Narasimha Rao would not oblige Sonia Gandhi by visiting 10 Janpat. But Manmohan Singh had no qualms about it. His belief was he knew what his role was and he was willing to play that, but he had a larger thing. He wanted to leave behind a legacy. Today we are talking about that legacy. That is, Manmohan Singh truly played the role of a Karmyogi. He was willing to give up his ego. He didn't bother who praised him, who did not praise him. Even when Kesari made him the chairman of the Economic and Foreign Cell, under which Jairam Ramesh used to function. I have had a lot of interaction with Dr. Manmohan Singh on economic policies. He would be willing to provide primer on many issues. See, there were many issues which we didn't understand. He would be willing to explain. This is the thing. So he had a lot of clarity. So if under Narasimha Rao he played a stellar role, that was because he believed in the direction given by Narasimha Rao, and he always credited the economic reforms to Narasimha Rao, and that he was only an executioner. But in the second term, as the Prime Minister, he knew that he had understood the system very well, having stayed too long in the system. When somebody stays too long in the system, he gets an advantage to rectify things that have to be rectified. But he also knew that Congress party had certain limitation by its very nature of its organization, and which he had to go with it. There was no other go. But his regret was probably later years that he could have acted more. And finally, Navika, today of all people, Anna Hazare has issued a statement saying that Dr. Manmohan Singh truly fought against corruption. I think that's the best tribute coming from a man who led India's largest anti-corruption movement.
Absolutely, India against corruption. And I completely agree with the point that you said, Shekhar, and Sheila also spoke about it. The fact is, look at the irony of life. Sonia Gandhi appointed Narasimha Rao as the Prime Minister, and then how they fell out, how when Narasimha Rao died, what the Congress did to him is part of folklore. But then Dr. Manmohan Singh had worked very well with P.V. Narasimha Rao, worked very well with Sonia Gandhi, actually straddled both worlds and kept his relations absolutely fantastically when it existed with Narasimha Rao and then later on with Sonia Gandhi. And that's the kind of man Dr. Manmohan Singh was. He knew his limitations, and the fact that you said he knew his limitations. One of those press conferences when he said coalition dharma on 2G, when he was asked questions, Sheila Bhatt, you wouldn't have forgotten that particular press conference, and he admitted coalition dharma made him do a few things to look the other way. It was the most candid confession ever.
A lot of the flack
You know, Manmohan Singh, in that sense, his. Hello?
Yes, Sheila.
Yeah. So, Navika, a very interesting thing for a reporter was that Manmohan Singh was very accessible and he was quite transparent. What he wanted to do, we could know in advance also, and afterwards also we can also double check things. He was a different kind of a prime minister. And, you know, I always felt this, that we rarely see a personality like Manmohan Singh whose resume can be matched by any other person. He had no competition, because how many people would be RBI governor, also foreign finance secretary, also finance minister, prime minister. He had played many roles, and planning commission vice chairman, deputy chairman also. So I wanted to say that, and also he foreign affairs. You know, in one of the interviews he said, Navika, and it really surprised me, that he said that in matter of handling Pakistan and America, I follow Atal Bihari Vajpayee. How many prime minister will say this?
Very well
and
said.
He said that he follows the line of how Vajpayee handled Pakistan. So it is very interesting that Manmohan Singh did something which was nothing unique, but he did it with actually firm resolve. He had a determination.
Absolutely, and just so silently, so much in the background, without too much of a sound and fury about it, that clearly set him apart from any of his contemporaries or even predecessors. His humility, the biggest factor, the fact that he knew his limitations, lived with those, yet carried on doing his task to the best of his ability, and left the rest just to politics. Was he an astute politician? Well, many say he was. He survived many winters and summers of politics, and in the best of positions, and that truly is done by somebody who's a great politician. About his good economics and the fantastic economist that he was, well, there are hardly any detractors. But how will history judge him? Well, people of India will remember him as a good man, a decent man, as Suhail Seth started this show with. Adieu, Dr. Manmohan Singh. A life well lived, contributions well made, and the Indo-US nuclear deal, a foundation laid for India that generations will remember.